On episode 38 of the podcast, we're going to talk about bull bars, roped in, and a tough subject. So that the last one could get deep. We'll see how things go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Luke Who's Talking podcast with me, Luke. What a plot twist that is. How you going? I hope you're well out there. Good. I don't know why there was an awkward long pause there for. I was waiting for a response. Of course you can't give me, well you can, but whatever. Anyway, now let's get into the first story. Now the other day I met up with a friend and one I haven't seen for a while, and I don't know why, but somehow we got into the conversation of bull bars. Now, for those of you out there who don't know what a bull bar is, I don't know why you wouldn't know what a bull bar is, but basically it's just like a nudge bar that vehicles have. Some vehicles have, trucks have them, four-wheel drives have them, utes have them, two utes have... That's for all you Joe Pesci fans out there. Two utes. They have them. I mean, you can put a bull bar on anything. But this friend of mine, he said, now why aren't they called cow bars? Why are they called specifically a bull bar? And that's an interesting thought. Maybe here in Australia we should call them kangaroo bars because... if you're driving in outback Australia or in the bush or anywhere or on a country road, you need a bar for your car because if you hit a roo, can do damage. So yeah, why are they called bull bars? Why not cow bars? Why not sheep bars? Why not like kangaroo bars? Why not elephant bars? Do you reckon in Africa they have an elephant bar on their cars, or a like an antelope bar or a springbok bar or something like that? Do they have sheep bars in New Zealand? Heather, do you have sheep bars? Is that what you call them? Or do you still call them bull bars? This is just a simple question. Why is it called a bull bar? And I'm trying to drag it out to make it seem vaguely interesting and so the podcast has some sort of length to it. Yeah, but it's an interesting thought. It's a bull bar. Why is it called a bull bar for? Is it to bull you out of the way? But then you can get nudge bars, which aren't as huge and aggressive. The door is, I've got it closed, but it's like, oh, there's a ghost. It's doing weird stuff. Ooh, can you hear it? Anyway, yeah, back to bull bars. Why are they called bull bars? Why not cow bars? Why not bovine bars? Why not sheep bars? You can get a nudge bar, which is like it's like a nudge bar is a bull bar that hasn't grown up yet. But that's just an interesting thought. If you know why bull bars are called bull bars, tweet me. I could have just Googled that, but why? I'm lazy. I refuse to do research. Anyway, let's get into the next story, which hopefully might be an actual story, not just me making wild statements about why a bull bar is called a bull bar, but it's not. But I don't know. So I'm sure somebody out there, well, everybody out there has a friend or like somebody they deal with whom's a very I don't know, is eccentric the right word? I don't know. Get sidetracked and that sort of stuff quite easily, or I'll just say an interesting character. Yeah, well, there's one of those people in my life. Now, they are actually one of my healthcare professionals, right? And they help me a lot with various things. And they get sidetracked, I think it's fair to say, quite easily. And I think they would also admit that they get sidetracked very easily. So this next story is something that happened just, I think it was last week or whatever, and it was just a whole, loop of stuff. It was a couple of hours, things changed and flip-flopped a bit. Can I say that? I don't know. Anyway, so I got a message from this Sam, who's my healthcare professional. We'll say that. I'll just refer to him as Sam. And got a message from him saying, "Oh, come to hospital. We're going to make a movie." So I was like, okay. So I finished work, went to the hospital, went in, made my way to their office, and they had their phone there with Filmic Pro on it. There you go, the app. And we were looking at that, playing about figuring out that app. And they were like, okay, so we're going to make a movie or a short film about, this. Because I can't go and speak at a conference tomorrow. Actually, no, like today, I can't go and speak at a conference in a couple of days. So I'm going to make a movie or a film to send to them. So like, okay, righto. So we came up with like a very loose idea of at least how said film was going to start. We hadn't figured out how it was going to end yet. But anyway, so we went and we filmed a bit of stuff on how, that a few scenes on how, the film was going to start off. Pretty much the basic concept was it was going to be a patient going to see a doctor. They were not engaged with the process at all. And then there was going to be some sort of epiphany happen where things would change and then the patient would be engaged with the situation. That's sort of what we're getting at. So, okay, how do you show that? So we did some bits of the patient, which was me, being not interested in the process of going to the doctor. Okay, fine, cool, excellent. We filmed a bit of that stuff. And then we just sort of floated around the hospital and harassed some people briefly for a moment, made our way back to Sam's office, and then they were like, oh, well, I've edited on the phone. And then I've then said, no, how about you just send me the files and I'll do it on the computer. So then that was a process and a half, figuring out, how can we do this? I mean, it was harder than what it should have been. So then we got the files onto my phone. We airdropped them, and then like that night I got home, got them off the phone onto the computer and into some editing software. Anyway, so that happened. And then it was like, oh, I've got to go to this person's house to pick some artwork. Do you want to come? So I said, oh, yeah, sure, okay. So we got outside of the hospital and we started walking towards vehicles, and so Sam was like, oh, so you're driving because my keys are still in the office. So I went, okay, is this allowed? And she's like, yes, it's fine. So we then walked to my vehicle, and I then drove longer than I think we both expected to get to this person's house. We picked out I'm using the term house loosely. It was a borderline an estate. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was a big house. We drove there, picked painting, drove back to the hospital. But what was happening on the trip to said house and back to said house was typical, just hype, can't sit still situation. So Sam had plugged her phone into my car and would play like a 10 seconds of a song, be like, oh, what's this song? So, on the way, from the hospital to the house, and then from the house back to the hospital, we were playing Guess This Song. So it's like, oh, what's this song? And if I didn't get it, I was like, oh, geez, you should have known that. My goodness. So, that was an interesting afternoon, getting roped into something and then that escalating into me driving halfway across town pretty much. Actually, no, across town and a little bit further to get a painting and then back to the hospital. But, oh, my. Yeah, it was an afternoon. It was an interesting afternoon, that's for sure. Wasn't expecting it. Does anything like that ever happen to you? It's like you go to the hospital or you go to see somebody and you think, we just got to do this one thing. It's going to be pretty casual. And then that then escalates into you doing just a heap of stuff all afternoon. Let me know if it's ever happened to you. Are you interested to know? Now, this last topic, or the topic of this last little story could be a bit heavy, maybe for somebody or some people, I should say. So, once again, when was it? A couple of days ago, I went to a bit of a. It wasn't a. I don't know if I'd say it was a book launch, but it was just a woman who she had written a book, and a talk with an author. I'll say that, like a Q&A talk with an author. Now, this woman, a few years ago, she was very spiritual, I'll say that. A few years ago, her husband, I think it was about 8-9 years ago, her husband died. So the book, I haven't read it. I know some listeners out there, I know at least one listener out there probably has read this book, and I can't even remember what it was called. Waiting for Angel, I think it was called. Anyway, it was just this woman wrote about her, I guess, journey, how she coped with the death of her husband, the build up to it, and all that sort of stuff. And it's promoting having and starting conversations about death, which it is. So I'm going to talk about that, right? I'm not going to talk about the book, really. I haven't read it or anything. But, it was an interesting evening. And, yeah, I'll just say, I think, regardless of where you're at in life, if you're old, if you're not, if you're young, if you're fit, if you're unwell or whatever, I think that starting and having a conversation, and I think just talking about, like, a death in general, probably isn't a bad thing, family or friends or whatever, and you just be like, or even talking about people maybe in your life whom have died recently, or whatever, or those sorts of things. So I don't really know where I'm going with this, jeez, but can I say death is a little bit like talking about sex. It's not really something, it's a bit of a tabooish, that's a bit spicy sort of subject, but it shouldn't be. It should be just, because it's a thing that exists, you can't ignore it. So I think it's something that maybe should happen a little bit more in society, and just try and make it a bit more of a, I can't say a casual conversation, but just start having maybe some conversations with some people or whatever. I mean, I don't know, it might be a bit spicy to go if you're at your parents' house or at your grandparents' house or whatever, and be like, yeah, so what would you like? How would you like to die? I mean, that's probably not really something that you could necessarily, that's probably not how you could start the conversation, but I think, but how do you start these conversations? I don't know. But I think they are some conversations that I think people need to maybe start having a little bit more, and just try and, you can't make that subject a casual subject, right? It's impossible. But just try and make it just a little bit less daunting. And it's just so you know what people want, what they'll want, etc. when, I guess, it's their time. I don't know. That's just, goosh, that was a bad. I don't know, yeah. Talk about things, people. Talk about them. Ugh. Well, that is it for this episode of the Luke Who's Talking podcast. I'm slightly reeling from the last story, because I was like, oh yeah, let's talk about this. Ooh, I'll throw it out there. And then I got into it and I was like, I have no idea what I'm saying. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope you'll tune in a fortnight's time or so for another one. And is today Black Friday? I think it is. So get yourself a bargaroony on the interwebs, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.